Have you ever woken up one day and realized you've built your whole damn identity around one chapter of your life? Yeah, same. I remember leaving the military and thinking, all right, who the hell am I now? Because let's be honest, peeling back those layers of rank, role, and purpose, it's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes straight up brutal. But that's where the growth happens, right? When you stop running from the hard questions and start leaning into them. Today, I'm bringing on someone who gets that down to her bones. Lauren Frazier is a former Air Force officer who spent 8.5 years crushing it as a force support officer, leading teams, managing products, handling shit with precision. But when the uniform came off, like a lot of us, she had to figure out who she was without the rank. And let me tell you, she didn't just survive that transition, she mastered it. Now, as the owner of Life Rich Coaching and Christian Counseling Services, she's helping people navigate their own heavy stuff, finding clarity and healing in some of life's toughest moments. Lauren's got the perfect mix of military grit, real world compassion, and a whole toolbox of skills from clinical counseling to yoga and even doula work. Yeah, you heard me right. She's out here guiding people, body, mind, and soul toward wholeness. So if you ever felt like you're stuck figuring out who you are after the fight, this one's for you. Buckle up because Lauren's about to drop some wisdom that'll hit you right where you need it. So let's dive in. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Adam.
You're doing doula work.
Well, I have done it. Currently, no, not as much.
You were doing death doula?
No, I haven't done, but I did serve while I was in the Air Force at Dover Port Mortuary for 6 months.
Oh, boy.
So,
I bet that was rough.
Yeah, death for 6 months. It was April to October of 2011, so saw 387 human remains returned.
I shouldn't be surprised. I lived it. So, hey, first question for everybody. Where'd you grow up and what was the moment that you decided to join?
I wish I grew up maybe in one spot, but as luck or God would have it, I was born in Hawaii. Because my father got taken out there for Coast Guard work. He got out. He's a big wave surfer. It's where he always wanted to be. It's where he still is. But then about 7 years later, after I was born, my parents got divorced and he had moved us back to the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. So Gulfport, Biloxi area, just about an hour east of New Orleans. But he went back to Hawaii because they got divorced. And so I spent dual time between Hawaii and Mississippi. A very, big variant difference.
Yeah, paradise to one of the poorer places.
No, well, right? The Mississippi Gulf Coast has its own charm. The food is phenomenal. But no, did I, love being in Mississippi? Yeah, that was a tough one. I mean, because my whole foundational thing was like sushi and being barefoot and surfing, and yeah, you don't do that on the coast. But yeah, so Air Force came into play. I was probably a sophomore in high school and I was on the swim team. I swam competitively from 9 into my first year of college. The natatorium was right off of Keesler Air Force Base. My stepdad had a FedEx route on the base and, gave me all this information. I think I felt definitely a call to serve. My dad had served in the Coast Guard, my stepdad in the Army. My grandfather retired out of the Air Force. My maternal grandfather also retired. No, wait, he served 12 years. He was an orthopedic surgeon. So yeah, I definitely felt the call to serve. I think I also had this like rhetoric in my mind is like, I want to be part of something bigger. And the military was a way to do that. And the Air Force was what was presented to me. And so I thought I would go to the Air Force Academy. And then I was like, that's a lot. I don't want to do that.
It is a lot. It's 4 years of military before military.
Yes.
It's like, I don't understand the West Pointers or the Naval Academy, probably because they're like probably even more not chill like the Air Force Academy. But I just don't. I've asked all of those West Pointers that have been on here too, like, did you know you were getting into 4 years of military before the military? And they're like, no, I wish I would have thought that through.
Well, and it's more hardcore, like, because I know plenty of people that went to the academy. And interestingly enough, most of them went, because I think most of them I knew they were athletes. They were like, oh, I was just going because they were, because they paid for school. And I was like, you had no frame of reference, like what you're getting into. And I think I had too much of a frame of reference of what I was going to get into. And so I was like, never mind. So,
and don't you like owe them 2 years for every year that they pay for?
I think it was only, I think you only do 4 after. I think it's the same. No, I think it's 6. It's 6 years from the academy. I owed 4 after ROTC.
Okay.
Yeah, because I ended up doing ROTC in college, but I went to University of Colorado Boulder, which was just north of the academy, but like I got all the autonomy to like grow up and be on my own.
What year were you there?
Oh, 6 to 10.
I think you might have been there at the same time as my wife.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she went to the University of Boulder. I don't think she finished there. She went to like a lot of colleges, but it's funny. Small world.
Yeah.
Um, it, it's interesting. My sister also, she was at the University of Miami and went ROTC for the Air Force. And that is, believe it or not, that's the advice I give to people when they ask me, what's my opinion on joining the military? It's always some ROTC program or one of the service academies, basically because I saw officers had much better lives in the military than we did as enlisted. And then my experience around the Air Force, you guys are pretty amazing in that I see a lot less Air Force folks have trouble in the transition, not to the degree that we in the Army and particularly the Marines have. But also, it's like big boy rules the whole time. It's not a lot of traditional like military stuff. And my lived experience in that is when I was medevac through Ramstein, we had to do multiple formations a day, and all of you Air Force folks were up in arms about how many formations we had to go to. In fact, I'll never forget this one E5. He was bitching the whole time, and he was like, I've done more formations in my week here than I've done in my 8 years in the Air Force. And I'm like, this is mind blowing to me because everything in the Army is a formation for everything. So it's I lucky you made the right decision.
Well, I think that so my stepdad was in the Army, and he was like, "Don't go to the Army." And maybe we knew some Navy folks, but they're like, "Do you really want to be at sea?" And I was like, "I don't know." And so then the Air Force was, because I wasn't going to go be a Marine, and so the Air Force was the logical next best choice. But I do remember through ROTC, I mean, we definitely had to do a lot of military stuff. I was definitely like your more military person. Like I was doing it because it was going to provide, or it did provide, stipend and some level of payment towards college. It was steady pay. And a guaranteed job on the other side of a degree. I grew up in a lot of instability. I mean, like I said, my parents got divorced when I was 7. My dad, by the time I was 15, was on his 3rd wife. Still thankfully married to her. But I have 7 younger brothers and sisters by a lot. The closest one in age to me, I think, is 8 years separation, but the youngest one is 19 years of separation. And my mom started stealing money from me at 15. Ruined my credit while I was in college. A lot of hardship. And so the military was a great place to provide some level of foundation.
Well, and I think that's true for a lot of us who serve because, like you, my parents were divorced before I was 7, probably, and then the back and forth. I get it. I totally get it. It makes a ton of sense. Over your 8.5 years in active duty, you were a force support officer. What does that mean?
Yeah, force support officer. So before 2008, so I went in 10, the officer career field was split up just like the enlisted career field. You had services individuals, so that's hospitality, recreation, so dining facilities, fitness centers, all the hotels. What else they did? The clubs, the outdoor rec, all those sorts of things as services, right? I'm not sure what the MOS would be in the Army for that, but that makes sense. You're doing like the business side of things, but you're doing like, bed down sort of stuff. Like what you would help with the lodging situation and the DFAC and whatnot. The other 2 career fields were HR, so human resources, everything that has to do with retirements and promotions and records, right?
And pay, right? Of course.
Well, finance. Pay is finance. So that
okay. So they separated it.
Right. It would have made more sense to put pay in the Air Force. I don't know how they do in the Army, but to put pay with the HR piece. But again, in 2008 and all their infinite wisdom, they're like, no, we're going to put services and HR together. And then, we're going to tack on manpower. And manpower is just like reorganization. Manpower is, like how to decide how many people each section gets.
Right, for sure.
All of the entities, right? So structural reorganization sort of stuff. They deal a lot with like budgets as it comes down from Senate and Congress, right? But yeah, none of those things really make any sense together. But for whatever reason in '08 and the infinite wisdom of the Air Force, they're like, we're going to put all these together. And oh, by the way, so in the Army, you guys have an MOS 93 mics for mortuary.
Mm-hmm.
I only know this because I was at Dover. For whatever reason, they put mortuary with services. I don't know if maybe it's because the DFAC has the reefers and that's where you put the human remains when, yeah, I don't know why they did that. But so I did anything from reorganization of structures to running clubs and dining facilities to HR, all the personnel actions and working at a mortuary.
So you're kind of a jack of all trades in the people space then. That makes a ton of sense. What were some of the most rewarding or challenging things within your purview there while you were in? I'm sure 6 months at Dover was pretty challenging.
Yeah. I think some of the most rewarding things were just taking care of people. I mean, if you're really being an officer and doing it well, you're prioritizing taking care of people, right? Your job is not to be the wrench turner, is not to be the doer. It's to be aware of the entire environment and take care of folks. So in all of it, because I mean, too, every year, yeah, all 8 years, I had a different job. I think the longest time I had a job was a year and a half, and that wasn't for any other reason than there were so many things to learn, and you're supposed to learn all those things before you can become a squadron commander, that you have to have exposure in all these different areas. And so I think the other rewarding part was that I was able to excel at practically all the things they gave me. So, just
That's
taking
fun.
Yeah.
I love it. Last thing about your time in service, what is kind of a pivotal moment of your service that kind of shaped you and that has stuck with you that you kind of lean on in everything that you do now? Like, what's that? I think everybody has something from their career. For me, it was, swallowing my pride, deploying to Afghanistan to be the TOC NCOIC when I had 3 previous deployments of the guy on the ground. And I was not happy about it, but it turned out to be probably, particularly if my career wouldn't have been cut short, it would have been one of the best things that would have happened to me as a senior non-commissioned officer, and just for just the overall knowledge that I would have had in my career. And so I learned a ton in that job, and I learned a ton about how war works. I learned a ton about managing troop movements on a battlefield, stuff like that, which culminated in I actually wrote an SOP for the entirety of the country on TigerNet on how to use an aerostat platform with TigerNet. And so basically developed my own battle rhythm. And I would have never thought that was something that I was capable of or was going to do, because I was too pissed off being a quote unquote fobbit, right? Like I wanted to be on the ground getting some. So you have anything that stands out in your mind now that you, from your career, that sticks with you like that today?
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree with you on like the humbling piece, right? I mean, you come in, pretty young. I mean, I was 22 when I commissioned, and, I don't want to say that I thought that I knew it all. I mean, I definitely had something to learn, but I definitely didn't know as much as I thought I knew, right? So to be humbled, by my peers, by the people that worked for me that had a lot more experience to say, okay, I don't know how to do what you're doing, but I am put in charge. So how can I help you best? Right. Mm-hmm. So really learning how to leverage folks, but also learning how to temper my, go do,
Right.
So I think that those 8.5 years really formed me in my ability to, take more of a whole and well-rounded approach and go, okay, let me learn, and then I'll go do.
Yeah, no, that's great. So the time comes, 8.5 years are up. You're deciding it's time to go. What was that like for you? We all know the transition, obviously, because what I've been doing, and a lot of people agree with me, the transition it's a colossal failure, the TAPS program, what's going on. When you start digging into the numbers, it really makes you sick. But what was your decision to get out, and what did you do to prepare, or didn't you do to prepare to get out, first of all, and then we'll talk about kind of the struggles in your transition.
Sure. So prepare to have your mind blown. I did not choose to get out. I was forced out. Yeah, so at 7 years in, I had already experienced a tremendous amount of workplace bullying, discrimination. As I said, I was deployed to Dover. I was sexually assaulted while on deployment
Fucking
there.
A. I intentionally didn't ask that question, but
It's okay. It's placed
it's
and
well, it's fucking ridiculous because as somebody who was I was just an infantryman in the army. It's a completely different world. We're not exposed to this stuff, so I didn't know that this was as rampant a problem as it is. And I'm getting ready. Heather Emerson reached out to me, and she's a big advocate in this. I've had Rochelle Smith on, who hosts the Silence Voices of MST, and so now I'm going to use my platform to call attention and fix this fucking problem too, because this is fucking ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous that every female that I've had on this show has got the same fucking story, and it's usually from senior fucking leadership, and it's a big fucking problem, and I don't get it. I really don't. I'm sorry. I'm off my soapbox now, but
yeah, like I said, lots of work, lots of healing. It's placed. I don't carry it anymore. It is a part of my story, but yeah. So 2011, just shy of 2 years in, sexually assaulted by a fellow officer. Didn't even know his first name. We were just deployed together. We were all out. Took advantage of a situation where I was intoxicated, and immediately reported it, reached out to my chaplain. The chaplain took me to the hospital, reached out to the commander, OSI got involved. We did a pretext conversation where the first thing that, the dude says is, you don't remember punching me, because I kicked him off of me. And then we proceed down, a year's worth of back and forth till finally we're at court martial. So we're in court martial by November of 12, I want to say. And he ended up being acquitted. It looked like the jury was pretty divided, because in the civilian world to convict, you have to have, unanimous vote. In the military realm, you have to have damn near unanimous.
it's majority, right?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think it was like there was 12 and there had to be at least 10, and maybe they had like 3 that were like, I don't know. It's like very circumstantial, because there was the rape kit was thrown out because they weren't refuting that sex happened, and I'm like, well, could we not explain about a rape kit? They're pretty awful. I wouldn't just subject myself for no reason. But then also the pretext conversation got thrown out because OSI apparently didn't do what they needed to do, their due diligence to, obtain it properly. So it was hearsay or something of that nature. So some fancy legal work. And, but he paid a lot of money for this lawyer. So, for whatever it's worth, I know he was in, or probably still is, in some level of debt. But he got to continue to serve. No idea where he was at or what was going on. But, I started to encounter no shortage of senior leaders. So like squadron commander after squadron commander, and then eventually group commanders that just rode me. Just, I'm reeling from this experience, trying to make heads or tails, but like nobody's giving me the breath. And it's like, you just need to deliver. And I'm doing my job. Absolutely nobody along the entire 8.5 years ever could point out, oh, you're not doing this in your job. I mean, if you look at all of my feedback, there was never any critique on the job. It was always just, you're not doing enough. You're not showing up enough. You're not. And I'm like, so I'm just never enough. Right. But we all also know that I'm reeling from this experience that has happened, and none of you are giving me the space or the time to actually heal, nor are you giving me any sort of validation that it actually happened because he was acquitted. I guess it didn't happen. Like, no, we all know that's not the truth. Like rape cases are just hard to prove because a lot of times it comes down to he said, she said, right? Doesn't mean it didn't happen, but you can look at all the behaviors that I then had. I had one squadron commander right on the heels of that say, I hope you were different before you were assaulted, because the way you are now is not going to work.
Well, what the fuck kind of answer is that? I hope you were different before this, instead of like, hey, Lauren, is there anything that I can do to help you get through this? You know what I mean? Like put all your biases aside, or whatever the good old boy system is, or protecting, whatever the fuck it is. And just like, she's a human who went through this thing. And, so dude wasn't found guilty, the court system, the military court martial system, whatever. But like, there's got to be some truth to this because I know who she was as an officer before this, and I see what she's going through now. Like, that's just common fucking sense.
Sure. I mean, one would think, but we're a smaller microcosm of the larger society. So what you see happening here is what's happening in the greater society. And so, I did my best to just, carry on. I think when I went in, I was like, I'm going to do my 4 years. I'm going to get out. But then, the money is decent and I was kind of good at the job. So I'd gotten married at this point, May of 2012. We had our first kiddo, January of 2014. Life had its bright spots too. And then we started living a life that was carried by two officers, and so starting to see if you can walk that back starts to get difficult. And so, our time in Mississippi, because we were in Missouri, I went to Dover, went back to Missouri, came to Keesler. That seemingly went decently well. Not so great at the end, had some, not so great commanders there. And then we went to DC and I was at Andrews and I was pregnant with our second child. I call up to AFDW, so it's the Air Force District of Washington Command, and who should pick up the phone?
No.
Yeah.
Him. Seriously. What a fucking nightmare. Oh my God.
So there's no as far as it was for me, because I was assaulted back in 2011. I think it was 2012 or 13 when they started doing the Special Victims Council differently. So they've put in other mechanisms along the way. But that by 2016 is when there was no personnel marker that would make sure that you didn't get stationed at the same base. And I had in Missouri been able to be moved on a humanitarian move to go back to a place where I had family and people who could support me and that sort of thing. So to be stationed at the same place was I remember realizing who it was. And I was on the phone. I wasn't sure who it, but then I hang up and then I call somebody else up there that I trusted, a chief. And I was like, hey, is this so-and-so? And they're like, yes. And the phone dropped and I'm under the desk in fetal position, full panic attack.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. And so I tell my squadron commander and it's okay, thanks for letting me know. And then I didn't hear anything about it. No one let me know if he was, moved from the base or how I wouldn't run into him. But then a week later, I also, go into labor and I have my second son and I'm on maternity leave for 12 weeks, to which for those 12 weeks, not one person from my unit checks in on me.
I shouldn't be surprised, not with a response from your squadron commander like that, because, just me as a leader, even as, just a regular OE6 in charge of a platoon, when somebody came to me with a problem that big, it's I'm dropping everything I'm doing to figure this out right now. What can we do to alleviate this? Because at the end of the day, no matter what the both sides of the story are, I assume you didn't know this squadron commander, right? You had just PCS there. You got to do things to take care of personnel that are going to be in your squadron, your platoon, your squad, whatever. You need to take care of them because they're assets to you.
Well, and I was one of his 6 officers, right? So as a squadron commander, it's not like you have a ton of officers, right?
Right.
So I'm one of your your direct people.
So it's even more imperative.
But then I returned back to work, and as I suspected was his thought, it was the 3rd of January, 2017. He's like, all right, so, I'm glad to actually have you be part of the squadron now. And I was like, whoa, wait a second, actually part of the squadron? And he's like, well, those 8 weeks before you had your child, it was you weren't really here. I mean, we don't really count that. And I was like, so all the work is, so why did I even come to work? If you didn't consider me here because I was going to have a baby and be gone for 12 weeks, but I actually did do a lot of work that what's the status on it, sir? And that's
I can imagine you could have used that 2 months off at 7 months pregnant to just go on and ahead and, if you're going to count me as not here, I would have enjoyed that time off. That would have been great.
Oh yeah. But just furthering the demeaning of what do I matter? I'm just a woman. I just have babies. Who, and this has just been repeated throughout my career. I mean, it's insane, the level of misogyny and just and it's not all men, right? My husband is definitely not one of those men, right?
I was going to say, for the record, we're not all like that.
You're not. And I don't believe that, but I encountered no shortage of it, to the point that my husband, he was like, it's going to be better in the next place. It's going to be better in the next place. And he finally was like, I don't think it's going to be better in the next place. It's just really that bad. But so I go back, he tells me that, and that same day I find out that my husband is getting deployed in 3 weeks, like short notice. He's out, he's got to go. And I've just had our second child. So I've got a 3-year-old and a 4 month old at home. And I'm returning back to her. Okay, this is the military dual spouse life. This is what we've got to do. So he deploys at the end of January, like January 31st, I think he deploys. And I'm back at work, I think, so all of January and February, so like 8-ish weeks. And I get called up to the group commander's office. So the group commander in the Air Force is right above the squadron commander. And he just reads me the riot act. He's like, do you need like mental health help? Like you've just had a child, but you're, creating a toxic workplace. Like he was pinning an entire toxic workplace after being back from maternity leave for 8 weeks on me, right? When this is an organization of like at least 1,000 people, but all the toxicity is me.
So you've been assigned to the unit for 7 or 8 months. For over half of that, you're there for 2 months. You're gone for 12 weeks, so 3 months, and then you're back at work for 2 months, and they're pinning a toxic workplace on you. This is fucking, you're right. My mind is blown. This is ridiculous.
I mean, it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't think you could even make this shit up. Like, I couldn't write a book that tells this story. Like, no, not to diminish your story by any means, but like, genuinely, like, I wouldn't even think of shit like this.
Well, and also it's like, man, I am really influential if I just like turned that many people that.
Yeah, for sure, right? Like, why don't I know about this power that I have, right?
Right. So, I mean, I think what it ultimately boiled down to is that I advocated on 3 specific occasions that I felt like I wasn't being supported in my squadron to higher levels. And that pissed some people off. They did not like that they were called to the carpet over it. So then they were going to point the finger at me and go, no, you're the problem, right? And so this group commander, after insulting me and asking me if I, like, he asked me flippantly, not even seriously, do you need mental health help? I know you just had a baby. And then actually he takes that back at the end of the conversation by saying, oh, well, my wife had twins and she didn't need help. You can get over it. And it's like, whoa, okay. But I'm responsible for the toxic workplace. So then he gives me an assignment to create a briefing for all of the airmen about my actions and how I won't do it. So I'm like, I'm already working a full-time job. I've got a 4-month-old and a 3-year-old at home that, by the way, nobody's asked me how I'm doing since my husband's been deployed for a little over a month at this point. And he wants me to now do extra work. So I'm like,
well, extra work to make you look like the fucking fool, which is, see, and that I would have told him to fuck off. Like, no way that's fucking happening.
I mean, my nervous system is pretty shot at this point, and post-traumatic stress is a very real thing. And feeling like, because I keep being targeted by men too, and, very closely and directly linked. I mean, I was targeted by a man when I was sexually assaulted. So, okay, let's just keep, rubbing salt in the wound, everybody. By the way, still don't know what happened to the dude. And you guys don't seem to care at all to ask me how I'm doing or, no. Okay. So I call my husband we talked every night, but I called my husband to say, hey, can you help me with this briefing? I don't have the bandwidth to do it. And so he takes care of it for me. And I look it over so that I can go present it and just be like, all right, check the box. Like, this is a nothing burger. I'm not going to fight you guys. I'll get it done. But then the group commander sends the deputy group commander in. And it was like, did you have your husband do this briefing? And I was like, well, he sent me the format. And yes, I had him assist me in it. But do you not understand how much I have on my plate? So I don't understand what the problem is. Oh, how dare I? So it was like I was in school again and I had someone do my homework assignment. But I'm like, I guess at this point in 2016, I'm a 28-year-old captain, adult, own 2 homes, have 2 children, husband's, deployed. I'm an adult, folks. Like, but you're going to treat, okay, got it.
Well, and to add to that, like, I feel like probably at this point, and I don't know how the Air Force is structured, but you're taking this to higher and higher and higher. Like, you basically feel like you have nowhere to go.
Well, at this point, so I had elevated it, but not like through official channels. But at this point, I do start.
Okay,
elevating.
so we're
So I
talking
go,
like
so I go to
for us, it's
IG.
IG. Yeah. Okay.
I went to IG, yeah. And then I went to EO as well. I had gone to EO to help with, trying to facilitate communication as well, because there was a lot of misunderstanding going on. And the toxicity wasn't me. Like, I actually, before the group commander called me up to blame me for the toxicity, I'd gone to EO previously to help with communication because I could see the toxicity happening. And I was like, we got to figure this out. This isn't good. Um, but then by this point, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're trying to pin this whole thing on me. And so I need to get IG involved. Well, not but like a week passes and the group commander calls me back. Well, the squadron commander calls me in and like he's like, it's all your fault. You're in trouble. Go to the group commander's office, which is very odd too, because typically, like, why is the group commander swooping in to serve discipline that the squadron commander is actually responsible for? But very weird. Very, very weird. You can't make this stuff up. So I go to the group commander's office and they serve me with an LOR, letter of reprimand. I am responsible for all these things. I have 3 days to rebut and I'm fired from my job.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Nope.
Wow.
Like I said, you can't make this shit up. So now I am placed over in Airman Family Readiness. I don't know if you know what that is, but yeah. So placed over there, no computer. I am deemed not worthy of having any duties. But the last I knew that of the guy that had assaulted me, he worked at Airman Family Readiness. So I'm like, are you kidding me? You guys.
So now they're intentionally putting you in a place to put you closer to. I mean, this you went to court martial with this motherfucker. That's enough for them to be like, probably shouldn't put these two at the same base ever. Now, I understand the larger system not flagging, people in a system. That's understandable. But like, even if it happens that you're on the same post and they're well aware of it because you've made them well aware of this at this point, in what fucking world is that a good idea?
In a cruel, like, we're gonna torture her world. Thankfully the guy ended up not being there, but there's no shortage of people who knew who he was and told me all about his time there. And
okay, well, were you able to gain any insights, and had he done anything like this again? Or so people were talking, see what I mean? This is Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty devoid of any sort of accountability for his actions, and it sounded like he was.
So he's basically getting away with it again and again and again. Just.
But it takes congressional action to remove an officer from the military. Now, granted, it's not like he was promoting on the same right because he had court martial in his record, but you still have to have congressional action in order to remove an officer.
But never mind, an NCO gets a DUI and their fucking whole career is fucked. Like, never mind, like, an officer gets to go to court martial for sexually assaulting someone and zero negative effects, and he continues to get away with it.
Well, I don't believe there were zero negative effects, but I don't know all the. I mean, I'm fairly certain.
As best we can tell, I mean, he's still doing things and things that he should not be. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I get to sit over at Airman Family Readiness for almost 6 weeks, 5 weeks probably. And I just read books.
So did you, I mean, so with the LOR, did they, I mean, was the writing on the wall like, I'm out of the Air Force? Or, did you have to like make the decision to get out? Or like, how did that work?
Yeah, so bringing it back to the original question. So when did I choose to get out?
Yeah, no.
That's a good one. So, I think that at that point I was pretty emboldened to be like, fuck you guys. You can't tell me where and what I do. And when I said I read books, a lot of faith-based books, really God, was my saving grace. I don't think at that point I was having suicidal ideations yet. But by the beginning of May, the wing commander had gotten involved and they overturned everything. So the group commander had, after my rebuttal to LOR, reduced it to an LOC, so a letter of counseling. But then through the IG complaint and the EO complaint, the wing commander removed everything. He's like,
so basically clean slate.
Yeah, clean slate.
Got it.
But he couldn't reinstate me to my job because I'd already been fired and don't really want to go back to working for these folks. And so my husband's boss got involved. My husband's still deployed, and his boss works at the Pentagon. And so they got me a job over at the Pentagon at A1S, so at the A1. And when I went over there, obviously reeling, and I try to share all the things that just happened, because they're all trying to make sense of it, because now my record looks all kinds of jacked up. And the
I really
one
hope
star,
this isn't more of the same problems when you go to the Pentagon. It is. Of course, it would fucking be. It's not, and and I was so excited because the wing commander reversed everything. Sounds like the wing commander was a pretty decent human,
eh,
or he was forced to by IG. Was probably the likely
well,
story.
so the one star or excuse me, the wing commander is an interesting piece of the story because he was aware that all of this was happening, but never stopped any of it. Because I talked to JA eventually, and they told me that one of the captains I was friends with, they were like, "Yeah, we told the group commander, like, you don't have a leg to stand on. Do not do this, right?" Yet the group commander, with all of his power and ego, did it, which ultimately, Adam, I think that all this started to happen. The only thing I can make heads of tails is that I was good at my job. I stood up and I challenged and I asked questions, and they didn't like that a woman would do that, right? How dare a brown Hispanic mother tell me what to do? But I don't want to say I routinely made them look stupid. That was never my endeavor. I mean, like I said, I was humbled by the work to learn and then to leverage, but I learned by getting to know the people, and then I would leverage that information. And so then it kind of made me smarter than them in these meetings.
Right.
But I mean, I got to know the people, and the people helped me, and then sorry.
That's how life works, guys. I don't know
Yeah.
if you know this or not, but
Dumb.
oh man,
So the wing commander, he knew what was happening. He could have stopped it at any point, but he didn't. Not until his hands were tied by EO and IG that I had to be the one with enough confidence to go do, because I think that's where we fall short a lot of times too, is people don't even know the avenues that they have access to, and so they just get beat to a pulp and then they're out, right? And then you're
right.
trying to start over, but you don't know how to because you've already been beat to a pulp, so your whole self-worth and identity is like decimated. So how do I
Completely, even more than it is from just the programming of regular military life anyway,
exactly
from somebody 17, 18 years old to 28 years old. I
right?
get it.
Yeah. So then I go to the Pentagon and I start working for a female one star. Our first meeting, I tell her, here's the story, so you can understand like exactly how I ended up here. And the first thing she says to me she said, well, if you want to have a future here, you need to forget about all of that and move on.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I, I
You
mean,
know, and Lauren, here's the sad truth probably about that one star is she probably had 25 years in, if I'm guessing, and her whole 25-year career had probably been that. I'm willing to bet. I've had Holly Taylor on this. She talks about the same thing. Her whole career dealing with this. I imagine that's probably, and I just don't know how you. I just don't get it. It just doesn't make. It's just you can't connect the dots
I don't
here.
know. But I think the answer really falls into the people that have the power, leveraging that power for good, like being the one to take the seat out of the table, right? Instead of going, well, I went through it, you get to go through it, right?
Right? She should have done that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this general had an opportunity to say, I see you hurting. I've been there. I'm going to extend the olive branch for you and help you. But instead, she was just,
Forget about all that and fall in line.
right. So
Yeah.
then I start doing what I do with my jobs is learning the people, learning the right, because this is when Secretary, Heather something, I can't remember her last name, the Secretary of the Air Force, was the beginning of Trump's first presidency. But anyways, they're like doing this massive overhaul on AFIs, so our Air Force instructions. We don't need them, make sure that they're reduced or like they've gotten rid of, because it's ridiculous. We have like rules on top of rules on top of rules. And so in the A1S, I was charged with doing that for the AFIs in our realm, which was kind of like a crap job. But I think they gave it to me to see me fail. Like their objective was for me to fail because this was a new thing, and there were no bars necessarily of what to make, so they could just make up whatever they wanted to. But again, doing what I do and going to learn people and leverage, and I start doing really well. And they're
I'm
like,
gonna make you guys look bad.
yeah. So we're kind of like, what the fuck? And then I remember distinctly being in a staff meeting. Our staff meetings were typically about 50 people. And I'm a captain. We work with GS employees. I think two of the folks, GS 13s or 14s, but I referred to them by their first names because I work with them like all the time. I was like, oh yeah, so and so and so and so. And this general stops the entire meeting and goes, "Excuse me?" And I was like, "Well, so and so and so and so. Excuse me, Captain Frazier. You need to use appropriate nomenclature basically for these people." And I was like, "Okay,
Ow.
Mr. So and so and Mr. So and so and I," right? She did that to me not just once, but it started to happen. Like she just, Captain Frazier, what? It was just anything she could call me out on, and just
Just being
small.
petty.
Oh, yeah.
Petty, petty,
To
petty.
the point that another lieutenant, well, another, I was a captain, a lieutenant colonel that's in those meetings routinely comes up to me and goes, "What did you do to the general?" And I'm like, "I'm a captain. What exactly can I do to a general? I didn't do anything." But she's just berating me, berating me, berating me. So now, so that's through May and June and July. By July, I start to have the suicidal ideations. I start to try to figure out ways that I don't have to be at work. By August, I
Is
think
your husband still deployed too?
he finally gets back in July.
Okay, so your husband gets home, and then the suicidal thoughts and ideations start.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and so I'm only asking because you don't strike me as a person. I feel like you're strong enough that you would have held out until at least your husband was home because of the kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, those probably seeped in because now I know my kids are safe. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, my
Right.
brain was like, okay, well, what's the resolution? And now working as a counselor,
It probably makes a lot more sense now,
the
right?
brain is always trying to find resolve.
Yeah.
And when we cannot find resolve, when we keep hitting that wall of no resolve, death eventually becomes an
The
option.
resolve. Yeah.
And so the brain is the first and the last battlefield. And suicidal ideations, I wouldn't say, I think that, I didn't have a plan. That's when people are like, this is the answer, right? I wasn't there, thankfully.
Well,
But
I can relate to that too, because I mean, at my darkest point, it was if I just run this motorcycle into a tree at 120 miles an hour, it all goes away, right? That's enough for me to consider it an ideation. I thought about it, and I'm actively riding the motorcycle. It's just a twist of the throttle and a slight turn to the tree. You know what I mean?
so that is passive suicidal ideation. Any thought of death, right? I mean, mine was like, if I just pull my car out into the intersection and let somebody hit it full on, right?
Boom.
If I'm in this parking garage and I just drive as fast as I can into the wall. Another one was like the bridges that went over I-370 or something like that, or 370, whatever it is, to the Pentagon from the parking lot. If I just jumped off the bridge, right, onto oncoming traffic, right, and these were the thoughts, and it was like, it's really scary, but they're just continuing to just debase me, demean me, like, and so at this point I'm looking at, okay, do I go guard, do I go reserve? Like, again, let me remind you, like, we are a dual mill couple, living in a certain kind of way, right? Comfort, and we've got two kids. Like, what are my options? But by September, I had a pretty aggressive panic attack that put me under my desk. And I had to call my husband to come get me. At this point, he's working on the Hill. He's a Senate legislative liaison. By the way, my husband has this fabulous career. I mean, like top, like, I mean, if he wanted to, he's got a straight line for GO, but that's not who we are. And he's going to retire next year. And
I'd love to talk to him.
so, yeah, he's fantastic. But like, he's got that, like, how is it that, like, did he marry the dirtbag? Right? Like, usually like people marry each other. So how is it that he's like just straight for the stars, and I'm this piece of shit that, like,
he's the rocket ship and you're the ship bag. That's not that
doesn't
doesn't
make
you
sense.
don't see that. Yeah,
Rocket ships don't marry dirtbag or ships.
they really don't.
They don't, so anyways, I call my husband, he comes and picks me up. And my husband's like a 6'5", 265 pound. I mean, he's a big man, and he comes in and he's just pissed. He looks at this colonel. He's like, how dare you? What is wrong with you? He gets me, we go see the MFLAC, and then I didn't go back to work. I was like, I wasn't AWOL. They couldn't say I was AWOL because I told them where I was, but I was like, I can't physically put the uniform on anymore. Like, I tremble and shake and I'm just unable. And I made this video that got like 22,000 views before I stopped looking at it. But that was basically a plea for help. Like, I can't do this anymore. And oh man, the comments, don't read the comments.
I'm learning that now, even with something as simple as just trying to fix the transition. There are plenty of people who think that I'm a whiny baby and that I don't appreciate my service. And it's like, you guys are missing the whole fucking point of what I'm doing. So you're right. Stay out of the comments. It's not healthy.
Yeah. So, I mean, after a week, I stopped looking at it, and, I had a couple people reach out to see if I could, it got Air Force wide and, to check on me, but then through October and November, they tried to institutionalize me, but they couldn't because I didn't have a drug or alcohol problem. They tried to discipline me some more.
For what? What are they disciplining you for? Because you have a panic attack. You're under your desk. You go to the MFLAC. I assume that's a hospital, right?
So MFLAC is the Military Life and Family Counselor. Yeah.
Okay, so definitely counseling, right? Like there's an issue here. This is not a disciplinary fucking problem.
Well, and I also went to Air Force behavioral health,
Okay, so we're taking the right steps
but
to
behavioral health says they either need to medicate me or there are no other options. You just need to get back to work. And I'm like,
no, that's bullshit. First of
like,
all,
this is your options for me? Are you kidding? I can't function. And so, it was a pretty brutal October into November. Finally, because they had sent me back to Andrews in this Pentagon gig. For why I don't know, but again, still hadn't found any resolve of where the guy was that assaulted me, and he could still be at Andrews. And like, please just don't send me back there. But they did, and finally, I get them to agree to bring me back to the Pentagon. I go back to the Pentagon. The colonel like reads me the riot act and tells me that these are all the ways that I have to, and I end up under the chair in a panic attack. I at least have a civilian present. End up running out of the room, and he lets me go. I mean, the repeat offenses to my nervous system were just crazy. At this point now, I'm like reserves guard. I need to get out.
right?
And by November, my husband and I, we said a prayer in our room, and it was, God, just take the house, take the cars, take everything. We can't continue. Like, we don't even care to hold or keep a life, right? My husband's experiencing secondary post-traumatic stress at this point, because that's a real thing, because the caregivers of the person with post-traumatic stress, it's pretty egregious. And within like a few days, I get another LOR for being 5 minutes late to the Pentagon. That one was crafty. I was like, really? And the civilian that I trusted, she was in the room. She was like, oh my God, if I got an LOR for every time I was 5 minutes late to the Pentagon, I'd have like 50, right? Or more. I can't even count. But they're trying to like make this thing stick. I get sent into the most egregious panic attack that I had ever had. It ends up hospitalizing me. I'm at Walter Reed. And my husband's boss, colonel at the Senate Legislative Liaison Office, she has been following this whole thing, and finally is like, okay, I've waited too long. I need to get involved. And she gets the 3-star of our A1 community involved.
So were these two like actually decent human beings?
So the colonel, my husband's always had great bosses. Well, for the most part, great bosses. So she's been following it because she's,
she's got a vested interest,
yeah,
right?
he does a great job. He, and that's my husband. And she cares about me. She's like, you're a good person too, and you're doing the best that you can. And so she's like, I've waited too long, but I've been following what's been going on. So she gets the 3-star involved. The 3-star basically swoops in. When she was a 1-star, was the Air Force SARC. So the sexual assault response coordinator for the Air Force. Right. When she was a 1-star. Now she's a 3-star, and she gets involved, and she calls my husband. She's like, hey, you and Lauren just, know that we're going to take care of you. And when Lauren's able to talk to me, please have her call me. I called her, and General Gina Grosso, and she said, you work for me now. Your only job is to heal.
Fuck yeah.
And that was the beginning of beginning of December 2017. And for all of 2018, I didn't put the uniform on. I was at home. I just had to call her office once a week.
So glad that at least you got that, because I'm willing to bet that even though you had been through all of that stuff, that year was probably pretty profound for you. You probably did some pretty good healing in that year. At least I would assume.
Yes. So 2018. So this really gets at your question, which is, the transitionary period. Now, I know that my Air Force career is done, which is a really weird place to be in, your military career to be done. It's a weird place, especially when you didn't choose it. And actually, I think that most people don't necessarily choose it. It is chosen for them by whatever circumstances come up, right? And for me, it was all those things we've just talked about. And so now I'm in that year trying to figure out, okay, how do I show up and what's my identity now? Because my identity was Captain Frazier, and now and I did TaskRabbit stuff, and I did What else did I do? Oh my goodness. I cleaned houses. Like I told, like I went and just cleaned people's houses. I guess through TaskRabbit maybe. I would leave the house every day with my computer and go sit at a coffee shop that a friend of mine owned in DC because we lived in the district. And I'm like, what do I do with my life? And I had gotten a yoga certification at the end of 2017. So I had that. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll teach yoga. I had started with Fit for Mom DC. So it's like you bring your child and you work out with the stroller when I first got there. So I got my certification in that in December of 2016. And I'd been teaching all of 2017. And so, I launched into all the fitness stuff. And so really 2018, like I just taught, I think I taught like 8 to 12 classes every week.
Nice.
And it was like, okay, this is a path, this is a thing. And then by the summertime, which I'm still not out because I didn't actually separate. My DOS wasn't until December 2018, but I find out I'm pregnant with my third child in April of 2018. By the summertime, they start the med board process. I decide I think I'm supposed to go get my master's in social work. So I applied, I got in. But all of these were like a series of God events, really. I mean, like saying the prayer and letting everything go. And then I end up in the hospital, which sucks, but the 3-star gets involved and, everything just starts to really fall into place. And I start my degree and I separate like 2 weeks after I have my third child. And then I'm like, okay, my worth is in my degree. But I mean, we probably need another another hour to really get into what that transition looks like. But
I've got the time if you do. If you don't, it's fine.
I don't.
It's
I have
fair.
clients.
Yeah,
I have to get.
totally. We'll have to do this again because this is part of a larger problem that I definitely want to use the platform that I'm building to try and, a lot of us, particularly just like I said, my background being in the infantry, it's a military within a military, and we're not exposed to what we have just spent literally the entire podcast talking about. And so the sharp training started coming down, and then it became once every 6 months, once every 3 months, basically once a fucking month. And none of us understood, like, what are we driving at here? Like, I don't fucking understand. Like, I'm surrounded by a bunch of dudes all the time. We never see fucking women ever. Like, now it all makes sense. It really, really makes sense. And very clearly it's falling short or whatever. So,
Well, you know why it's falling short though, Adam, is because we need real stories. Like
yes.
you're getting real stories in the recent history of what you're doing. And so you're like, oh my God, right? And I have offered on a number of occasions to share my story with the greater Air Force populace to say, hey, can you identify with me? Can you see me as your, wife, girlfriend, sister, mother, whatever, and then go, oh, this is really happening. And now you understand why the start. But the start training is so like, I don't know, impersonal and, it doesn't hit with most people.
I think it would hit a lot more if it was a panel of not just women. I'm sure women is the predominant, victims of all of this, but I know there's men that go through this. I've actually had one on this podcast that was sexually abused while they were in the military. So as a male. And so I think it needs to be a panel of people telling their stories. And so definitely I want to link you up with Rochelle Smith because she's running the Silence Voices of MST. I know that she's got a pretty decent following to get your story out there. I think that that's one place that you can start if you're interested in that. I would love to do that. And then, I want to wrap this up with, telling people what you're doing now, but also just, I don't know how you could look back on your Air Force career and actually like what is that like for you? Like do you love the Air Force? Do you hate everything about your service? Like how do you reconcile any of that?
Right. I think I went through a big period of resentment, but I came through it. And that takes time and space. It takes a lot of gentleness. It's a journey, it's being willing to feel all the things to, I resented my husband for a little while because he still got to do the job. Uh, yeah, I mean, so yes, I for a big time, I hated the Air Force, but now, no, I mean, like, I have 4 children. Would I recommend that my children go into the military and into the Air Force? Sure. I recognize that it's not the Air Force. There's a lot of really not great people. But also, the organization at large, like, am I a fan of big organizations anymore? No, not really. Like, my guidance and direction for my children would be, to grow their relationship with God. That's really been my, saving grace. And he has led me to what I'm doing now. Like, I have my own practice and I'm doing really well. And I mean, I think that we're all very curious and adventurous when we're younger, but that gets stamped out of us, due to practicality. And so, I mean, I said it in the beginning, I went to the Air Force to have financial stability and foundation, and so to be in a place where I get to be creative, I get to do what I was designed to do, which is to have big conversations with people. Do make your own thing.
Yes. That's what I'm here advocating for. Make your own fucking thing. Don't let them shove you into their box. I love it. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. Please tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in your coaching services and all of that stuff, or if they just, maybe they want to share their story with you and find some kind of resolve in whatever they went through. I think having, voices like you telling your story and that's super powerful. So
thank you. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, www.liferichcoaching.com, or just liferichcoaching@gmail.com. And here to help, here to serve in another capacity, and happy to be of service.
Awesome. Lauren, thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget to like, rate, review, subscribe, download, all that good stuff. Also, if you're looking for a place to help you transition better, I've built a free community where you can come have real conversations about what you're going through and not get bullied like you will in a Facebook group. I'm curating as many off-the-wall resources as I can find and that are called attention to me. That you're not going to find on a TAPS program or a VA website. There's a lot of great veterans out there building a lot of things to help us transition better. Keep in mind, the transition is not a one-size-fits-all type of thing. It is an individual thing. And so what works for one person is not necessarily what's going to work for another person. My objective is to meet you where you're at and just give you my advice based on me walking a mile in your shoes. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I genuinely do enjoy helping everybody just live better lives. Until next week, take care. Lauren, thanks again for being here.
Thanks, Adam.
That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.